Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's Steven and Janaka. That's right, new name. We finally made it. 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 hours of watch time, fully monetized. And how are we gonna celebrate? We're giving away a Mavic Mini to you. So stay tuned. We're gonna talk about our thoughts, our first impressions, what we like, what we don't like, and then we're gonna give it away. So let's hit it. So the Mavic Mini is DJI's latest offering. It's really interesting because it's a great beginner drone. It comes in under 250 grams, and why this is important is because you don't need to register this drone.
So DJI already has the Tello, which is even smaller than the Mavic Mini. However, the Mavic Mini is the first real quadcopter offering in that Mavic Pro foldable design that you can get for the quadcopter drones on the market. And why this is so significant is that it is under 249 grams and it can also do 2.7K footage. That's pretty rockin'. And we've had some examples we're gonna roll for you in a second so you can see footage from this little bad boy, also compared with the Mavic OG, the good old Mavic Pro, and the Mavic 2 Pro. But why I think this drone really ticks off all the boxes on that first drone shopping list: A, the weight is perfect. B, it also has fantastic response and it's very easy and quick to set up. Right out of the box, you get the drone itself. You also get a controller that many of the Mavic Pro and Mavic Pro 2 and Mavic Pro 2 Zoom would be familiar with in terms of its specifications, designs, and how it attaches to your smartphone. But Janaka also did a recent unboxing of the Mavic Mini, and I'm gonna pop that link right up top here so you can watch that fresh drone coming out of the box, that new drone car smell, and get an idea of what you're going to expect when you open it for the first time.
So one of the big considerations is how resolution matters to you. So like Steven said, it can do 2.7K, but that's up to 30 frames per second. If you want that slow 60 frames per second, you got to drop down to 1080 HD, which isn't a problem, but it is a make or break for some people. When it comes to photos, it takes some really great JPEG photos, so it doesn't have RAW capability, but it has a great 12 megapixel sensor.
12 megapixel sensor?
12 megapixel sensor. The sensor size is quite a bit smaller, as you can see. It's 1/2.3 inches in size, so quite a bit smaller than, say, the Mavic 2 Pro, which is a full 1-inch sensor. As far as build quality goes, it isn't as sturdy as the other Mavics that you might see, but the whole point is to keep it under 249 grams. So for that reason, I actually like the build quality. I think it's great for a starter drone.
It's a windy day in Toronto.
What I will say about this drone though, is it only has sensors on the bottom to check out the landing, but it doesn't have the surrounding sensors to see if you're gonna crash into something. So the thing is if this is for a beginner, I kind of think the more sensors the better. What you can do is, DJI has a plan that if you pay $69 a month, if you crash it, they will send you a free drone as insurance. But to be honest, I don't think it's worth the price.
Like, it's so small. Like, this thing is amazing in terms of its ability to be a compact, flyable camera. And as Janaka said, it's a 2.7K resolution in video and up to 1080 at 60 frames per second. It's pretty rockin' to think that this tiny little camera that's even smaller than my smartphone can get that kind of result. You can also, while you're flying this, you can adjust the camera settings in the DJI Fly app to manually change the settings. Frame rate, you can change the shutter speed, and you can do that when you fly on these little bad boys. One thing to take into consideration is I've not seen any ND filters on the market for these. So when you pop up this drone, you are limited to the exposure and the conditions in which you're flying in. With the OG and the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic Air 2, they all now have on the market ND filters and so you can use to make sure your image is not blown out and you get that same quality cinematic result. But with this little guy, that's all you get.
But going on what Steven said, aperture in this bad boy is an f2.8. So that'll help with the exposure levels, but it's not like the Mavic 2 Pro where you could adjust your aperture, and it's not a 2.2 like the OG. So even though it'll help with the exposure settings in daylight, because of the small sensor size and the f2.8, it's gonna have a tough time with noise in low light.
Now we're gonna compare footage between 3 different drones. We're gonna compare footage from this little Mavic Mini, the Mavic OG as we call it, the Mavic Pro, as well as the Mavic 2 Pro of the skyline of downtown Toronto from Broadview Park. So you're gonna see essentially all this footage, both in video as well as a photo, the video being 2.7K and the photos being JPEGs, of how the sensor and the camera responds to flying in a, you know, pretty much a sunny day in downtown Toronto. So let's hit it. So battery and connectivity, this is the most, I guess, talked about issue when it comes to any drone on the market. This little guy boasts he can do 30 minutes in the air. 30 minutes on a drone this size is phenomenal, and when we tested today in Broadview Park, in windy conditions as you can tell right now because we're under trees and you can hear the wind blowing the leaves, he gave us exactly 30 minutes. And that's pretty phenomenal. When you hook that up to your smartphone along with the controller, to guarantee the fact that you can fly on a single charge for 30 minutes, that's a huge bonus to someone learning how to fly a drone for the first time. Also, this battery's built in, so you're not taking out additional batteries and you're not having to charge multiple batteries. You just plug them in and away you go. There's also a car adapter you can get for this particular drone, so if you're flying on the go, if you're hiking, if you're doing any kind of like travel, you just plug it into your car. He charges within about, you know, a couple hours. He's fully up and ready to go. So that's a huge benefit to a first-time drone because it saves you money from having to spend $200 on a Mavic 2 Pro battery or a Mavic Pro battery or $125 to $150 on the Mavic Air 2 battery. On top of the battery and the camera and the build quality, the next question that you will always find in these videos, that are a ton of them talking about this drone, is how does it do with connection when you're flying and how's the reliability in the air? We tested this out obviously on the DJI Fly app, on an iPhone XR as well as an iPhone SE to see how the results were, and we were pleasantly surprised that we did not lose connection while we were flying. It's nimble in the air, it performs well. This does not have the OcuSync connection that you get on the Mavic 2 Pro. It has a Wi-Fi connection that you get for connecting your drone. Like, we didn't have issues flying over various areas here in the park. Now, this is subject to the area that you're in. There's a lot of Wi-Fi transmission, or if it's a very busy area downtown, you will probably notice that your connection might jump in and jump out. So take that into consideration whenever you're flying. However, I would imagine if you're off in the country or you're off in the woods or camping or, you know, places where you should be flying this and not downtown, you probably will have no problems with the connection at all.
So now would be a good time to say that, you know, DJI is not sponsoring this video in any way. They're not paying us. We bought this with our own hard-earned money and we're giving it away to you. So when we talk about good things about this Mavic, we mean it. One more point, and this is just par for the course. I have not had any autofocus issues with this, so it's never been an issue. You know that then DJI is making this and not Lumix.
Wow, it says the Sony lover.
I should go ahead and say Sony is not sponsoring this video either. So who is this drone for? I think we're all asking ourselves that question. So I think this drone is for beginner flyers. It's a great little drone to toss up in the air and just get started right away. It has good enough video quality. I would say by no means would it be a professional drone. So if you are looking for a professional look, go for the Mavic Air 2, the Mavic Pro OG. But if you want to spoil your husband, kid, nephew, uncle, this is a great gift.
So since this drone is a great beginner drone, you might be asking the question, what laws apply to this drone? What regulations are in effect when you fly this drone in the city, in the country, and about the area that you live in? Off the bat, being 249 grams, this drone does not require registration. It does not require you to have the basic or the advanced certificate in flying. It does not require insurance, although, well, should insure any piece of gear that you have. It does not require the basic regulations that apply to a Mavic Pro, to a Mavic Pro 2, and etc. down the line. This drone essentially can be flown by anybody, and laws don't apply to it that you'd find in that realm. However, there is a law that applies to every drone and also applies to this. And Don Drones On, who is a great guy to find out all kinds of information, especially in Canada if you're flying a drone, I'm going to link his video talking about this above too, that mentions the fact that this drone falls under, I believe it's like law article 900.036, or you'll see when you watch the video, where it mentions that any drone operation in Canada cannot be performed in a reckless or dangerous manner. So if you're flying a drone for the first time and you're popping it up and you're scooping around people and you're flying around buildings and it's like, woohoo, I can fly this thing anywhere, that is where that regulation comes into effect. Although drone flying is still a bit of a murky area in many countries, it is beginning to become more regulated. And if you are below 18, let's say, or you're not an adult, you have to take into consideration that you're still responsible for the operation of this drone and are still liable for any sort of damage it may cause, regulations you might be breaking. Fly this in a very safe manner. Know where you're going. Fly in line of sight. Make sure you have your planned route set out so you know what you're going to be flying in. It's not exactly you're popping it up and going, because that can lead to all sorts of bad results for first-time flyers.
And piggybacking off what Steven said, you can't fly within 30 meters of someone. You can't fly it over crowds. You can't fly it in national parks and some provincial parks as well. But also, you gotta look at the countries that you're visiting, because there are countries that will, no matter what, confiscate your drone right at customs. So thanks again for watching, guys. Good luck to everyone who enters. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if not for the Mavic Mini, consider subscribing, because we have some great videos coming up, some great tech reviews, and some great giveaways. So until then, we'll catch you next time.